Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk. Hi.
Hello.
So, you're back from Hawaii.
I am. Oh my God. Nobody swears there. I did not hear anybody. Because you know me. That's every third word out of my mouth is an F-bomb. But like people, nobody's mad. People are nice. People don't honk their horns. They actually act like there are other people on the planet. I understand now why people go there and are like, I must move here and commune with nature forever.
Okay. I had a friend who did it, not forever, but briefly, living on the beach, eating fruit off of trees. Legit, just...
That would be hard.
Bathing and brushing their teeth in the ocean.
No, I don't want to do that.
Also Puerto Rico. Yeah, see, that's what I want, but somewhere in South America.
And we made it all the way to our last day before we got any substantial rain. I mean, it rained a little bit. It rains every fucking day, but just a little here and there. So the last day, we check out of our Airbnb, and I've gotten a day use hotel. Mm-hmm. It's a Holiday Inn. It's not a no-tell motel. Because that was my first
a day-use motel, and I didn't touch anything.
Yeah, and we hovered above the seats. That was the one time it rained kind of hard. And so we stood there for a minute. So we checked out. We're in the lobby, and I'm like, well, let's just give it a few minutes. And Joe looks at me, and he goes, I do not think this is going to stop. And it did. It rained hard enough that you couldn't see the ocean. So he had his raincoat and I had my poncho and we put him on and just trucked down the street to a few blocks to the Holiday Inn.
Fun.
And they nicely let us in early. So we went to the room, toweled off.
It wasn't like drops of ice like it is when it rains in Colorado.
No. You know how when it snows here, you get that really fine snow that you can barely see? That was what the rain was like. It's so fine you can barely see it. And most people just ignore it.
Yeah.
A few people have umbrellas, but most people are just like, because you can't.
Like people in Oregon who laugh at people who pull out the umbrellas when it's raining.
Yes, very much. But
I'll get used to holding that up then. Except they've been in drought, so maybe they don't laugh anymore.
That could be.
Now they have umbrellas to collect the white rainwater on top so they can drink it.
But we heard that it was a very dry spring and a very wet spring. So, whatever.
You weren't on the rainy island though, right?
No. Although all of them have a rainy side, but we were not on the rainiest island. Kauai is full of wild chickens. They're fucking hilarious.
You know what? I've seen that because the house listings pop up there on the for the love of old houses, and then there's chickens. There's chickens in the pictures, so I looked at it. I think I read in the comments one time that somebody was like, "Oh yeah, there's just wild chickens."
The funniest thing we saw, we were driving back from something, and there was an overlook. I said, "Stop! I want to take pictures." So because
I need to know there are feral chickens, please.
They are all feral.
Like they attack you like feral dogs.
There are feral pigs, feral cats, and feral chickens. But the chickens are not. The chickens have totally sussed out how to get food from the stupid humans. So so we pull into this rest area, and it's got the overlook on one side, and on the other side, it's got, 3 or 4 picnic tables between the parking lot and the road. And we're laughing because I could not have done it. There's this couple sitting at one of the picnic tables having their lunch. And there had to have been, I am not kidding you, 100 chickens surrounding them. Just
like seagulls.
It was a sea of chickens. And I looked at Joe and I said, And as soon as they got up, the chickens just swarmed over that table.
Oh my God.
Looking for crumbs. I was like, I saw a rooster and he was walking along and I said, "Sir." And he immediately walked over to me. I was like, no, not feeding you.
He's like, guess what?
If you talk to the ones in town, they will answer you. But it was funny.
I just see myself spending the whole time talking to chickens. Let's watch the ocean, chickens. Let's just do that.
They will. They will.
Here are some crumbs so that you remain my friend. It's way easier than making friends with crows and ravens and
yes,
magpies.
You don't have to bribe them, and it doesn't take. You feed a chicken one crumb, they're your friend.
They're forever.
They will forever be your friend.
That's great, except for if you're the person who the rooster decides to chill near your house and wake you up in the morning.
Yes.
No.
It was funny because it was dark when we got there, so I looked out the hotel room window and couldn't see anything. The next morning, I'm like, what is that noise? And then I finally opened the curtain and I'm like, why, that would be the ocean right there, and that would be a rooster. He has things to say. And I am very sorry I did not have any musubi.
Oh, that's okay.
But because every time I saw it, it was like in a convenience store, and they had one of those little hot glass containers, and it was a big wad of rice.
It's spam musubi, so it'd be fine.
And
nothing can go bad on that.
But it did not, and it's tightly wrapped in plastic, and it just looked like it looked like what you expect a fart would smell like. So I was not but I did have Loco Moco, and that was awesome.
Yeah,
that was just. I was like, fuck. I could have a bucket of this gravy.
If I were you, though, I would not have it then at one of the local places.
Yeah.
It was a little ritzier than what they normally have here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Based on your picture.
Yes. It was a nice breakfast place. So I was very cranky. I was like, why? Because I had not had my tea. So just like, let's try here. Fine. Do they have tea? That's all I was.
Travel. Fun.
Yes. And be cranky when she doesn't have her tea.
Yeah, StokerCon's like, what, in the next week or two? And you're like, are you going to StokerCon? Fuck no, I'm so tired of traveling right now, man. I got to travel for work in August again.
Where are you going?
Retreat.
Oh, but you don't have to sleep on the ground.
No.
So that'll be good.
I did have to share the room with 3 other people last time, though. Which was fine, because they were very chill, but I find that a struggle.
Yes.
I've been shared room with very few people in my time.
I feel lucky to count myself as one of them.
Yeah, they were fine with my noise machine. They were fine.
I love your noise machine.
But I had to go lay out in the living room to read ahead of time, right? Because everybody else was crashed, so.
And they're not like me. When I stop talking, I'm asleep. So do whatever you want. Play the trumpet, take up the drums, read.
Yeah. So, yeah. I don't know where it is yet. They haven't determined where or quite when.
Well, it'll be in Arizona, though, won't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Next week my son graduates high school.
I can't believe that.
I mean, his graduation thing isn't until the next week, but his last day of school is next Tuesday, and then Monday is senior skip day.
Yeah,
and Tuesday he has finals, and then that's it. And then, but Wednesday we got the invite to the award ceremony, yes. So Skid is getting some sort of award. He has 2 of those rope things.
Yep.
He has the gold one for his grades, and then he got one for being in robotics, which is cool.
Nice.
So that means Girl Child will have one for swim, hopefully. Right? Hopefully. I don't know how that works.
I don't either.
I didn't pay I don't know if I had anything. I just left, and then I showed up to the graduation thing with a robe.
Yes, I had the cap with the tassel and the robe. It. I don't remember any kind of ropes or...
No. That's it.
But I remember when I got to college and somebody said, didn't you take AP classes? And I said, what are AP classes? I never even heard of them.
I didn't know until it was too late what they were, because I could have done that. Damn it.
Small school didn't have them.
Oh, well, we had them. There was just the way we did registration. See, the way the kids do registration at my kids' school is they go on and they have the entire booklet there in front of them.
Yep.
And online, and then they write down their first choices, and then they do some second choices and third basically, so that if they don't get their first, then it bumps up. Well, what we did is they would put us in a room, and we had a blank schedule, and we had to run around and find the teachers for the classes that we wanted. And like some people must have had some resource ahead of time that I didn't have. But I would usually knew like, I want this teacher or that. I know that I need this. And so then you'd get their stickers. And if they were out, then they were out and you couldn't get that class. And then you had to scramble and find something else to fill that space. I absolutely hated our registration every year. It was pure chaos.
Yes.
And one year I had to take 2 of my siblings with me. Because my mom had to take the other 2 to a doctor's appointment or something. So she dropped me off with a toddler. It was my middle sibling and my youngest sibling.
Oh, my God.
And, like, the principal ended up coming actually very nicely. I sort of appreciated it at the time, but thought that he thought I was their mom. So I was like, I'm not. But because my sister was born when I was 14. And my brother, I would have been younger than 14. But he took them and got, like... Very nice of him. Nice. Got them drinks from the vending machine and hung out with them for one part while I could do it. But you can see, like, if I were to show you my pictures from each year, you can tell what year that was. Because my makeup had, like, my eyeliner had smudged underneath my eyes. And I was just like my hair was a little wild. Because I was doing that with 2 small children.
That is not designed for that.
Fuck no.
It's not designed to be helpful
to anyone. Like, no wonder.
When I was in high school, there were 2 tracks. There was the college track and the VOTEC track. And that was pretty much it. And I still remember my youngest stepbrother, who's my age. He's 3 days older than I am. He's the youngest of 9. And he went in to see this guidance counselor. And the guidance counselor had his schedule all made out. And Bob said, I would like to go to college. And the guidance counselor was like, you sure about that? And I was like... I said to Bob, tell Mom. Because my mom was like, if he wants to go to college, then you're putting him in the college track. And there was no. Because she served on the school board for a few years, which was not the political position that it is in a bigger city. And she knew all those people. And she was like, nuh-uh. Now, my mom was not a cusser, but her vibe was totally, I am not taking any shit from anybody. So,
it reminds us. So, we recently watched 10 Things I Hate About You with the kids, but it's like, it's been a couple months. But Allison Janney is the principal, and she's a romance writer. So, they come, whenever Kat, I think is the character's name, played by Julia. Anyway, main character.
I can picture her, and I can't.
Yeah. And she comes in and here's Allison Janney. She just holds up a finger and then she goes back to typing and then she's like saying out loud, the throbbing member.
I've never seen that.
Oh,
I know.
It's one of those ones like this, honestly, because I tend to feel like if it was a teen movie or something like that, you're not going to enjoy it going back as an adult and seeing it for the first time if it doesn't have that meaning to you. But this one, honestly, it's fun because it's a take on, it's not The Taming of the Shrew. It might be The Taming of the Shrew. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think it is. But it has Heath Ledger, who does a really good job at it, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, the person whose name I can't remember right now that you can picture.
Julia Stiles?
Yes. And, just some other people in it. And some of the adults are some character actors that I quite enjoy, right? But it's that witty, quick dialogue that I like. And she is all snark, the main character, Julia Stiles.
I resisted seeing the movie Heathers because I was an adult. And I was like, who wants to see a movie about high school girls?
Yeah.
And Joe was the one, he just kept saying, no, you want to see this.
You want to.
He finally convinced me to see it. And I just started laughing. Like, probably a minute into the movie, I just started laughing. And I was like, oh my God, I love this movie. So fast forward one weekend.
It's like Mean Girls. Mean Girls is one I'd be like, doesn't matter, it's a teen movie. See it.
Yes. So I sat down with the girls and we watched Heathers. And I think sister-in-law Amy was with us because she had never seen either movie. So I showed them Heathers and they showed me Mean Girls. Oh. And Mean Girls is such a part of the culture now.
Yeah.
Because how many times do you hear, you go get Glen Coco? I mean, I hear that. She doesn't even go here. So many things.
That and, Clueless.
Yes.
Lines from those two.
We watched that with our Girl Scout troop.
Yeah. Heathers never would have been made after Columbine.
No.
Never, ever. Mm-mm. But I'm glad it got made before Columbine.
Yes.
Oh, who is it? I had this thing pop up in my memories. That's right. It was because in one of the groups I was in that was like Colorado. So it had a lot of tourists in it, but also had a lot of locals who wanted to hear about, oh, here's a place I haven't been. And what do you do to go tubing down the river? Like, where do you go to do that? And stuff like that. And some person had just moved here from Florida and they were posted. They were like, I think I probably talked about it on here then, but it just amused me to see it again. So there are a lot of murders in Colorado Springs. I just moved here from Florida, and I'm like, from Florida. It's much worse here than Florida. Sure. Okay, we're in Florida. No, big city. Bullshit. Why did they think there were a lot of murders here? Not because of the news. Because Homicide Hunter was here. Homicide Hunter is a TV show with Joe Kenna. And he was a homicide detective in the 90s. So the entire show is about homicides in the 90s. And she said that she had taken this to mean that it was chock full of homicides here.
Oh my God. Lord.
Oh Lord. That popped up in my memories yesterday and I was all, but I was reading through all the comments on there about it and just everybody.
So speaking of memories and about movies, have you seen anything yet about the movie Still? That's the documentary about Michael J. Fox. And I know you're a big fan.
Oh, no.
I just saw it in the paper yesterday. I don't know. Time is a little wibbly wobbly right now. But it looks really good. It was made with Michael J. Fox. And it's apparently whoever made the film, and again, working with Michael J. Fox, it wasn't interviews. It's not interviews of people he worked with. But for instance, the woman he married, Tracy Pollan, was a guest star on
Family Ties.
Yes. And so there's a lot of clips that show the two of them as their relationship progressed in real life. So there's a lot of what was in his work reflecting. And then, of course, it gets to the whole Parkinson's. And it sounded so good.
Yeah, I should definitely check that out. I've only read one of his memoirs. I think he has 2 or 3. Because one of them is about the beginning leading up to Parkinson's, right? And then, like, all the shit that happened with the Parkinson's and how that worked. So.
And have you seen the last, I know it just opened, Guardians of the Galaxy?
No, I've heard that there's animal brutality, so I'm not going to see it in a theater.
Oh, yeah, because they go into
raccoon
rockets.
Story, yeah. So, I think that's
a good point.
Yeah. I guess, hey, let's go ahead and start.
Okay.
But yeah, I did hear, because in one of my autism groups, somebody posted and they were just like, just a warning. I bawled through a huge portion of this movie.
There was another movie, I can't remember which one now, but there was a scene of animal, and I went, oh, I am so happy to know that. I will not see that in the theater.
It was that Joe Bob was on last night because it's the summer season.
Yes.
But though they're splitting in half, so there'll be a break and then they'll come back. But the dog gets killed. Well, Babadook. That one's old enough that I'm just going to tell you, spoiler, a dog gets killed in
Does
it.
it?
But
I haven't seen Babadook.
Yeah.
Because there was another one that came out at the same time about the woman who was on house arrest in her mom's house.
The comedy?
No.
The New Zealand comedy?
Yes.
Horror comedy.
Yes.
It's like Housebound.
Yes. I saw that one. It came out about the same time.
That's very different.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know why.
Because they came out at the same time, they are linked in my head, and for some
one
reason,
is Australian.
Yeah.
And one is it's set in Adelaide, but Babadook. But yeah. No, they're very different. The Babadook is like about a single mom losing her shit.
I'm surprised that more single moms don't lose their shit.
Yeah.
That's fucking hard.
Yeah.
So.
And this kid is like high needs or whatever, so.
Go ahead. What have you got for us this week?
So I'm covering the Connecticut River Valley Killer. I'm not going to say that a lot.
No.
It takes concentration. On August 6, 1988, a 22-year-old woman named Jane Borowski who was 7 months pregnant, pulled up to a closed store that had a vending machine outside. She was on her way back from a New Hampshire fair and just needed something to drink. However, when she returned from the vending machine, a Jeep Wagoneer was parked next to her white Firebird. When she climbed into her car, a man walked behind her. Like, he walked behind the vehicle and circled around to the door, and then he opened the door and tried to pull her out. He asked some BS question, right? So that she was like, you're thinking. It was, are the payphones working?
Oh, always lock your door when you get in your car.
It was the 80s. I will say for a lot of these, it was the 80s, and I think that was the problem. But yeah, first thing, that's women are the ones most likely to be targeted in that way, and the ones who are most likely to leave it unlocked because they get in and start going through their purse, or they do this or that, and they tend to just get distracted. But no, just get in and lock your door, and then
go through your purse.
So anyway, he lobs this question at her, are the payphones working? And then he pulls open the door and he's trying to pull her out. And she fought like hell because she's pregnant. She's trying to protect her baby, right? And she manages to get some really good kicks and actually kicked her windshield and shattered it. Like, that's how hard she was fighting. But then he pulled out a knife and he held it to her throat and he said, perhaps this will persuade you to get out. And she said, yep, it did. So he's got her and he's asking her these weird questions. She said he was very confused. He's asking her stuff like, oh, you beat up my girlfriend, didn't you? And she's like, who the fuck are you? And who's your girl, right? And then he says, well, you have Massachusetts plates, right? And she didn't. She had, I think, New Hampshire plates.
Oh my God.
Because she lived not that far from there. And finally he gets up and he meanders to the back like he's going to check the plates. And she said the dumbest thing she ever did in her life was say, what about my fucking windshield? Yep. Because at that point, she thought he was just confused, thought she was somebody else, so she didn't think she was in danger anymore. And she said it, and I can't say anything because I probably
you would have said the
similar.
Same thing. You wouldn't have waited that long to say it.
No. So he came back, right?
Oh.
And she 7 months pregnant. There was no speedy climbing into that car. So he got her and he stabbed her 27 times was the count from wounds in the end. And then he left her. Basically, when she stopped struggling, it was like he got bored and he got up and he went over to his car and he drove away and she was trying to get up and kind of crawl.
Oh, God.
And he drove within inches of her, looked down, their eyes met, and then he kept going. But yeah, he left her to die and she didn't. She didn't die. She got into her car and she drove to a nearby friend's house because they lived along this major thoroughfare. And crazily on her way there, now she is bleeding profusely, 27 stab wounds. Yeah. Also, your blood volume is increased when you're pregnant. So just consider that too, right? She ended up right behind him on that highway on the way to her friend's house. So she is driving behind the Jeep Wagoneer to get to her friend's house. And he must have noticed, but so the thing is, she gets there and she pulls off, and I don't know if she honked or what, she didn't say, but they came out and they're helping her, and she's lying out there on the lawn, I think, and he turns around, comes by, brakes, looks over at them, and then he takes off. So, like, I would have been freaked out if I were the friends, too, because, but nothing else ever came of that. So it's astounding that she not only survived, but successfully drove to her friend's house, which I think was at least miles away. It's not like it was right there next to it. Because once she got to the hospital, he had severed tendons in both knees, severed her jugular, both lungs had collapsed, her kidney had been injured, he had severed a tendon in her thumb, like, she was fucked up.
Yeah.
But the baby was fine, not one stab wound.
That's
because she said what she was doing, that's all she was covering was her belly.
Yep.
And so not one stab wound went in there.
Wow.
And the baby ended up being born later fine and all of that. Borowski would turn out to be the suspected final victim of a serial killer that had haunted the region since about 1978. And this again was 1988, according to a profile created by police. She did give them the first 3 license plate numbers. Mm-hmm. I think it was like 633, but the problem was the rest of it was so dirty she couldn't see it, or else she would have had the rest of it. And she was able to give them a sketch So they did have a composite sketch from him. And I will say there are some non-canonical victims that they have kind of loosely associated with this. I'm going to go through all of them. So some of them are after that. Or I think at least one, maybe two of them are after that. But as far as the canonical, which if people aren't familiar with that, you're probably most likely to have heard that with Jack the Ripper. Because they have the canonical victims that they're pretty certain were his, although that's even argued. But there are some outliers that may or may not have been associated with him. That's that's an example of a serial killer that it's become so, here's this, and nothing outside of it has been passed along, and it's the same thing every single time it's told, right? It's become lore, I guess is what I'm saying. So before her, the victims were Kathy Milliken, a 27-year-old woman. She went out to Chandler Brook wetlands, and she was going to go out there to photograph birds. It was October 24th, 1978, and she was last seen by people who knew her as she left work, but people at the wetlands did report seeing a woman of her description out taking photos. She never returned home that night, and her body was found within 24 hours. She'd been stabbed at least 29 times. The next connected crime wouldn't occur until July 25th, 1981. In this incident, a University of Vermont student named Mary Elizabeth Critchley disappeared while hitchhiking, a friend of hers having been the last known person to drop her off on the Massachusetts Turnpike. Her body was found 80 miles away in New Hampshire, but it was badly decomposed, so no cause of death could be determined. A non-canonical victim, I went ahead and put them in the appropriate dates. Except one I skipped. It was 1968 and it wasn't anything like any of these. And I was like, why is this in here? So anyway, a non-canonical victim suspected of being killed by the same person, but not as strongly connected as some of the others, was killed October 5th, 1982. Sylvia Gray was 76 years old and she was bludgeoned, stabbed, and dumped in the woods in New Hampshire.
Okay.
So may or may not, right? On May 30th, 1984, a 17-year-old high school student who worked as a nurse aide disappeared while hitchhiking on her way to see her boyfriend. Again, this is that theme. That's why I said the 80s. There's two themes we're going to see here. Hitchhikers and unlocked doors. Okay? Shit changed a lot after the 80s. His mom was the last one to see Bernice Courtemanche. Her body would be found in April 1986. I don't understand this at all. But I looked and this is how they said it. This was the fact in all the different pieces. That's 2 years later by a fisherman. And it would be determined that her throat had been slit. She'd been stabbed in the chest and her head had been injured. I was like, how do you know that after 2 years? Other ones that were found sooner were skeletal remains and they couldn't determine cause of death. Why was she preserved in some way? So I could not find anything that explained that. I looked. I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. No. She was next to a river. She wasn't in the river, but she was next to the river.
Yeah, so you're thinking damp and animals.
Yeah.
And
so how could they tell unless everything was just so intact? Maybe she was in a spot the animals didn't get to her. They could see the hyoid or I don't know. Somehow, how did they know her throat had been slit? I know stabbings, you could see evidence of that in the bones.
If they strike a bone, there's evidence in the bones.
And from the frenzied way he's doing over 20 stab wounds, I'm certain they probably all had nicks, right? Yeah. But the throat slit, I didn't get it.
It would have had to have hit her.
Yeah.
Hit a bone
or
somewhere.
Maybe her spine was cut. I just don't know. And it frustrates me not knowing. I'm like, how 2 years later are you telling me this? And yet some of them found within months are couldn't tell the body was too badly decomposed. What? Mm-hmm. Whatever. On July 22nd, 1984, a 26-year-old nurse named, I put one 26-year-old nurse. That's what threw me there for a second. I was like, what the fuck? A 26-year-old nurse named Ellen Ruth Freed was speaking with her sister from a payphone at 2 a.m. It's like, damn. They talked for about an hour, and during that time, a car kept driving back and forth nearby. She didn't say what kind of car.
Fuck, if it drives by more than once.
Right? Well, she's telling her sister this, and then
I'm getting in the car.
Then she said, okay, hold on. I'm going to leave you here. Stay on the phone. I'm going to go make sure my car is going to start. So clearly this was somebody who had kind of a junker probably. And her car did start, and she came back and she said, I'm going to take off. Hung up. She never got home. They found her car the next day when she didn't show up for work. They did not find her body until September, several months later. It was felt she'd been sexually assaulted, and there was evidence of stab wounds, but her body, again, that's that's a few months later. Not 2 years. See what I'm saying? July 10th, 1985. A 27-year-old woman named Eva Marie Morse was hitchhiking in New Hampshire when she disappeared. Her body was found almost a year later, close to where Critchley's body had been found. That's a large part of why a lot of these are connected. I mean, A, a bunch of stab wounds. B, dumped in the woods. And a bunch of them, there were very similar locations. So this is clearly something that they felt somebody was coming back to these places. She had been stabbed multiple times. The next victim was different. This victim was killed in her own home. 36-year-old Linda Moore was seen doing yard work at around 2 p.m. on April 15th, 1986. But when her husband arrived home from work later that day, he found her in the living room, brutally stabbed 25 times was the count. She had put up a fight, as evidenced by the state of the living room, but there was no sign of forced entry. And I was like, duh, she'd been out doing yard work. She walked inside, didn't lock the fucking door. Well, they lived off of a major highway. It was like Route 10 or something, you know, like, and that's what kind of puts these together too. Okay. These women are being plucked off of a highway. They're victims of opportunity. Yes. It's felt that they weren't being cased ahead of time. Neighbors had seen a suspicious man somewhere in his early to mid-20s carrying a blue backpack and loitering nearby, so police were able to create a sketch of him. It was different than the Jeep Wagoneer sketch. And the thing is, they don't know that he was connected. It was just weird that he was hanging out. Maybe he was hitchhiking, and he just happened to be doing it near that neighborhood. Right. He had a round face and dark rimmed glasses, and and I can't remember if he was the blonde one or the brunette one, but another one, then they said he had dark, so the opposite. Another non-canonical victim was next. This was the only male victim, and so I'm just not sure. Right. That this should be included. But since it was similar enough, I included him. Stephen Hill was 38 years old and disappeared on June 20th, 1986 after stopping into work to get his paycheck. His body was found a month later on the other side of the river from where Gray's body had been dumped across there. And he had been stabbed multiple times. The final canonical victim was Barbara Agnew, another nurse. She disappeared only 10 miles from her home on a snowy night, January 10th, 1987. She was on her way back from a ski trip with friends and pulled over at a rest stop for this is a big mystery. People don't understand why, the police didn't understand why she pulled over. I am going that there is a theory later. She was, I think, 10 miles from home. On the way back, long trek back from this trip. How old was she? I didn't say for her, but they were mostly in their 30s and 20s. So I think she could have driven 10 more miles to go pee. But because you know what struck me was, what if her period started? I'd still drive 10 miles home. I wouldn't go to a rest stop. Are you kidding? Ugh. I wouldn't either. There wouldn't be a pad or a tampon there. Well, no, but if she had one in her purse and it started, and I don't know. I think I'd just blade. But yes, it's a theory. Maybe she was, how late was it? Because I'm like, okay, maybe she was so tired, she was starting to feel sleepy. So she pulled over for a minute, like opened the window, Yeah. Well, I don't know. Because they did check the vehicle. It wasn't disabled or anything. Her blood was found throughout the car. Steering wheel, back seat, and some of her bloody things were in a nearby dumpster. Her body was found in March, only 12 miles from her car's location in Vermont. She had been stabbed multiple times as well. While Borowski is considered the final canonical victim, the survivor, there are a couple more victims thought to possibly be from the same killer. One was an unidentified woman found in Massachusetts on June 24th, 1989. She had been dismembered, and her head and torso weren't found, which is why she hasn't been identified. That one is... It was decomposed enough that they couldn't do, fingerprints or anything. Okay. Yeah. Then on July... But that was the only one that would... Dismemberment. Yeah. But that could have been hey, here's the next thing I do, and they can't figure out who it is. Who knows? Then on July 25th, 1989, a 14-year-old girl disappeared on the way to a friend's house in New Hampshire. They found her body in the woods 2 years later. Cause of death could not be discerned. So there are several suspects. One of them I won't name because I didn't feel that it was compelling enough. His name is available if people want to look it up, and therefore I also did not name his victim, the known victim. The reason he's a suspect is because he confessed to raping and killing a 16-year-old girl in Vermont on May 20th, 1984. Her body was found only about a mile from where Martin's body was dumped. And this suspect had previously been, it then did get convicted of 2 counts of lewd and lascivious conduct with a child. He recanted his confession of the rape and murder and was acquitted. But the fact that he stabbed the girl to death and jumped her not far from one of the canonical victims is what lands him on the suspect list. But that was it. He was in prison from about 1996 to 2010 for those lewd and lascivious acts, and that could explain why other crimes stopped, but that was pretty far after that. Even the last 2 maybes, which were in 1989. So yeah, I wasn't going to throw his name out.
So even the woman, the last victim who lived, even with a sketch and the first 3 digits of his license plate number?
So, with a sketch and knowing it was a Jeep Wagoneer and the last 3 digits of his license plate number, there were over 1,200 suspects still.
Damn.
Yeah.
That just seems...
I think they said 1,250 or something was the number. Yeah. The second suspect confessed to Agnew's murder from his deathbed and acted, this one's interesting, in October 1997. His uncle, who he confessed to, went to police with the story, but felt they weren't taking it seriously. The confessor was 46-year-old New Hampshire resident Gary Westover, who was a paraplegic. He said 3 friends had picked him up, loaded him in his wheelchair into their van, and used Westover to lure Agnew into pulling over into the rest stop. Westover did identify the 3 friends, but they were not pursued. And here's the thing. The names of the 3 men have not been released. But, interestingly, it's thought that the 3rd suspect was one of those friends, but he was mentioned as a suspect by someone completely unrelated to Agnew's case. And then when family of Westover, the guy who confessed this, heard the name, they said, it does sound familiar. He might have been one of those 3, because the problem is Westover died and then that uncle died. So, it was thought that the 3rd suspect in Westover had met at a hospital, and that's interesting considering several of the victims were nurses or nurses. Yeah. Now, what's interesting is I found some articles, so I was like, I'm not citing these at all, because they were so far off, because they said they were all nurses. Well, they weren't. Yeah.
Those little clickbait articles that read...
The nurse killer.
Yeah.
Nope. But a lot of them were, which is interesting.
Right.
So, I don't know. Anyway, this 3rd suspect is Michael Nicolau, whose girlfriend and kids disappeared in 1988. A web sleuth by the name of Lynn Marie Carty, who has famously become known as the Reunion Angel because she's really good at investigating and finding people, had a friend whose daughter was the one who disappeared with Michael Nicolau. This daughter, Michelle Marie Ashley, had 2 children, Joy and Nick, and had told her mom that Nicolau had a short temper. He was a Vietnam vet, did have PTSD, and was very troubled. Michelle had told her mom if anything happened to her, it was him, and that she needed to find her children and get them away from him, but they were her children with him. They were common law married, supposedly, but that's trickier that people just assume people are. It's a lot trickier than just being together for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
But they were not legally married, but they did have the 2 children. Carty started her search in 2001, easily tracking Nicolau down near Tampa, Florida. Like 15 minutes it took her to find this guy. Just nobody else had that capability. In 1988, that capability didn't exist.
Right.
She got his phone number and she called him.
Good for her.
Yeah. She called him at first. So first he was like, how'd you find me? And then he was like, I don't know any Michelle. And then Carty persisted and he said, okay. Michelle hooked up with a drug dealer and she abandoned the kids with me. I still have the kids. They're fine. Carty reported this to Michelle's mom. Michelle's mom went to the police and they started looking into stuff, but the kids were his and there's no other proof that she could have run away.
Right.
So it didn't go anywhere. Nick was only 1 when his mom disappeared, and Nicolau had told him the same story he told Carty. So Nick grew up thinking his mom had abandoned him for a drug dealer. In the 90s, Nicolau married a woman named Eileen Bowman, who had a daughter close to the same age as Nick. Her name was Taryn, and they were very close. But when Nick was 18 years old, the couple separated. And on December 30th, 2005, Nicolau dropped Nick off at a friend's house with some beer and told him, "You'll always be my son." Then he drove to Eileen's house. It was actually her father's house. That's where she'd gone to get away from him. With a rifle and a pistol hidden in a guitar case. And shot both her and his stepdaughter. And then committed suicide.
Oh.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. Cardi kept investigating Nicolau, eventually happening across the murders of the women in the 80s in an area where he'd lived at the time for all but 3 of them. For 3 of them, he lived in Virginia. As she pointed out, this is all very small. You notice that some of these, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts came into play, in this river
they're
valley.
small states, and you can
and
get
these
from one
are
to the
happening
other.
on highways connecting. So, yeah. She spoke with Borowski, who viewed pictures of him and said, yeah, that could have been the guy that attacked me. It could, because it's 20 years later or whatever. Well, more than that, probably. And she said, could be him. Sure. And investigators have added him to the suspect list, but so far they were like, there's really not anything connecting him to these. And also, the one murder we know he committed was with a gun, not with a knife. Michelle's body has never been found. Nobody knows where Michelle is. She's still a mystery. Eventually, Borowski stated she actually didn't think he was the attacker. And she's looked at the data. She doesn't think it makes sense for all of the murders, so she's kind of taken that back. She feels Cardi is after press and is ignoring the evidence that doesn't fit and excludes him. She said that she would get very defensive when she said, okay, but what about this? This doesn't jive. And she would just shut her down. A happy ending of sorts has come from this, though. It's also created a lot of pain. Cardi and Nick have become close, despite her accusing his father of being a serial killer. That took some work and desperation on Nick's part. He really hit bottom after all of this.
Well,
which obviously, he was 18.
And you think your mother has abandoned you, and then your father
does this to he really liked his stepmother, and he was very close with his stepsister. I think she was between 20 and 22. The stories differed. He was 18. So she was within 2 to 4 years of him.
Yeah.
He kept saying, so all these articles said he was alone in life after Nicolau killed himself and the stepmom and stepsister, but he had this sister.
I was going to say, did he have
Joy
a sister?
is not mentioned in any of them, so I don't know if that's respecting her wishes that she be left alone or what. I was like, and what about the sister?
Yeah.
So I think she was still alive, and I'm just thinking maybe they're respecting. She's like, I'm staying out of this. Cardi got Nick help after he reached bottom, connecting him with the Dr. Phil show, who, for all their flaws, did help to get an apartment, and because their thing is, we'll help you in exchange for you coming on the TV show. This is how they're paying some of these people. And they continued helping him so that he'd get therapy, so that they helped him find the resources to get his high school diploma that he didn't get, because this happened right before, know, and stuff like that. So it was beneficial to him. Unfortunately, his grandmother died before Cardi connected with him after the murder-suicide. So, I mean, she knew they were alive, but she never got to see them again. The serial murders remain unsolved. Jane Borowski, possibly the sole survivor of the serial killer, now has a podcast about the serial killer, her experience, but her focus is on survival and mental health. She had a very dark period after her attack that even landed her in jail for a time. And it wasn't until later she was diagnosed with PTSD. It took them a long time.
People weren't.
No, it's not a thing that was happening. It wasn't even a term they were using. Really.
No, if they used PTSD, it was
Vietnam vets.
Yeah, it was, people who'd been in war.
Yeah, because with a shell shock before.
Yeah, I was just going to say shell shock.
Her podcast is called Invisible Tears. If anybody wants to check it out, I wanted to leave it on somewhat of a positive. Yes. My sources were the Keene Sentinel, Only in Your State, Murder She Told, Front Page Detectives, and Wikipedia.
I do love Only in Your State.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get
stuff on there.
Sometimes there's cool haunted stuff. Because sometimes I will go there looking for, are there any cool hauntings in the state? And I'm sorry, but just because a place is old and abandoned does not mean it was haunted.
I know. Something they're like, this place, this, and you're waiting. You're like, you're waiting for it. And they're like, next one.
And there are sanatoriums that were humanely run.
Yeah.
And I mean, yes, any place that has a lot of sick people are going to die. It doesn't mean they're going to haunt the place. Oh my God. So I am also talking about an unsolved mystery. So does it often happen that we... Spoiler alert, it's unsolved. So I'll jump right in. Dale Kerstetter was a 50-year-old security guard and maintenance worker at the Corning Glassworks in Bradford, Pennsylvania. So if anybody cares, that's northwestern Pennsylvania, near the New York border and not near much else. Corning does that. They go into some place, because there was a Corning near where I grew up. They go into rural areas and hire fucking everybody, and everybody loves them. Dale had worked for Corning for 27 years, which is a pretty big deal, because thinking about retirement, thinking about pensions, it used to be, back in my day, but no, it used to be you got on with a company and you stayed there until you retired. Doesn't seem to be the norm anymore, but it used to be. The Corning plant made long glass rods for electrical resistors. Okay. So the day we're talking about is Saturday, September 12th, 1987. So we're going back a few years. Only a couple, though. The 80s was just yesterday. So Dale shows up for his 11 p.m. shift as a weekend security guard a little bit early. He was a solid employee. He was a good father. All of his kids have since said, and even his ex-wife, he had 6 children. He was a real family man. He was divorced. His teenage son still lived with him. And I want to say his teenage son was like 16, 17, 18. Not a young teenager, but he was
an advanced elder teenager.
And the pictures, he just looks like such a mild-mannered person. He was 5'4" and weighed 130 pounds. Aww. He just had gray hair and a little round face. Later, the personnel manager for Corning called Dale a marginal employee with whom they occasionally had trouble. They said he was a slow worker.
He was the Homer Simpson.
And I'm like, he was there for 27 years. Yeah, but then this was after the fact. But, and this is a very big but, several years earlier, there had been an accident at the plant, and a forklift accidentally rolled under a stream of hot molten glass, which cascaded down onto the propane tank on the back of the forklift. And there were people in the area, and Dale jumped on the forklift and drove it out from under the steep stream of molten glass. So I'm like...
So he was middling as an employee, but quite heroic when shit went down.
I'm like, that's marginal? That's what you call a marginal employee?
Yeah.
Yeah, what the fuck, Corning? Did you want their actual blood?
What the fuck, Corning?
So, on Sunday, September 13th, employee John Lindquist arrived at 7 a.m. to start his security shift. He expected to find Dale waiting for him right inside the front door. There was a seat there, but he wasn't there. So Lindquist goes further into the building because it's really unusual that Dale's not sitting there waiting for him. So he goes all the way to the cafeteria, and Dale's lunch pail is sitting there next to a newspaper. And when Lindquist picked up the paper to look at it, he found Dale's car keys, or it didn't say car keys, his keys. So I imagine he's got keys to the plant and whatever else on there. That's underneath the paper. And then he looks at the lunch pail and discovers it's still full, that Dale has never eaten any of it. And I'm specifically using the term lunch pail because back
Dale
then...
got raptured.
Perhaps. But do you remember the aluminum?
Yeah.
They were lunch
like
pails.
The movie one?
It had the rounded half moon top and then the square bottom.
Love it.
My dad had one. My grandpa had one.
How do we make those? Those are way better than
those soft-sided insulated. Yeah. Okay, I do like the insulated feature. Yeah. However, they don't hold
Even
up.
As a kid, I had a metal lunchbox.
Yes.
It was Gremlins.
That is the
I wish I still had that lunchbox so much. I would use it now. Gremlins? Are you kidding?
You would pack it. You would pack yourself a lunch every day.
I would have a snacky snack everywhere I went with my little Gremlins lunchbox.
I love that. Yeah. So, Dale, nowhere to be found. So, a few hours later, so for some reason, they don't think anything of it at first, but a few hours later, his truck was found in the employee parking lot and the police were called.
Okay.
So when they examined the truck, they found the keys in the ignition. So the keys on the table must have been his work keys.
Uh-huh.
So I knew car keys came into it. So the keys were in the ignition. A carton of cigarettes were on the seat next to the empty holster for a .22 pistol and his day pack.
Huh.
So all this stuff, and one of his daughters said later, they're like, he could, and it was a fairly new truck. He was still making payments on it. Then one of his daughters was like, I can't fucking imagine him leaving his cigarettes for anything.
Okay.
They're like,
his lunch, whatever, but his cigarettes?
And it wasn't a pack.
Which is funny because that is often true when somebody disappears. They're like, he would have taken his cigarettes.
They're like, yeah, or if it's a woman, they're like, well, her purse was here and her wallet was here and her car keys, but my God, her cigarettes were still here.
She would have been nicking out, jonesing for it.
So later the same day, the police brought in a canine unit to see if they could track Dale's movements through the corning plant. And the dogs led the police to the second floor to the tank, which is what they called the plant's glass furnace. So the tank was full of platinum pipe, which plays a major role in this story. Also of note, the tank was not on Dale's normal security route through the plant. The dog also searched the surrounding area outside the plant and a nearby creek. I would like to say, because I was all like, a glass furnace? I was all excited because what better way to get rid of a body? But it wasn't running the night in question.
Okay.
So, no. It's just like, I'm like, pig farms. No. Plant management said that Dale was supposed to call the main office every hour after making his rounds. So on Saturday night, he didn't call after midnight.
Gotcha.
They later figured out there was a new person working in the main office who didn't know the protocol, so didn't know that he was supposed to call every hour. So he didn't, that wasn't immediately.
Didn't notice there was something wrong, which kind of defies the purpose of that safety measure.
Yes.
To not tell the person who's supposed to take the call that they should expect it.
Yeah, it kind of does.
That's
safety.
Some dipshit
and it's
training.
one person guarding your whole plant.
Yeah.
But he's he's marginal.
He's marginal.
I'm like, yeah. So once they established that Dale was nowhere to be found in the building, authorities went to the plant's 3 security cameras. Whole plant, 3 security cameras. But this was 1987 security. So it's not anywhere close to current technology, and the images were very blurry. The first that they saw a man in a black mask skulking. I think that was actually their word, skulking at the back of the plant. Then they see Dale meeting the masked man in the back of the plant. The tapes show Dale and the masked man walking together, and that is the last time Dale is ever seen. The masked man is seen going to the area where the tank was. And at that moment, Corning management, when they're looking at these tapes, started wondering, we're missing an employee. Are we missing anything else? Well, $250,000 worth of platinum pipe was missing from the plant. Because platinum is a very, very expensive metal. The people who've seen the tape cannot agree on one important point. Because depending on what article you read, they skew one way or the other. There's no middle ground. Some of them say that masked person was very familiar with the plant and knew exactly where he was going. Others say that it doesn't appear that way at all.
Okay.
That it looks like that's why you see him more than once. He's trying to figure out where he's going.
And this is why witness statements are actually pretty useless in a lot of ways.
There's a moment on film where Dale is walking by the camera and he looks straight into the camera. That's another thing. He definitely knew where the cameras were, but some people say he was defiantly looking at the camera like, I'm doing this and you can't do anything to stop me. And others, including his family, say he's looking at the camera as a desperate plea for help.
Well, I feel like that would be true. Otherwise, he would have masked himself. He knows where the cameras are. Like, why?
I'm thinking he could have avoided them altogether. There's only 3. He could have avoided them.
Right. And if you're going to go do this whole setup, I'm sorry, I'm leaning everything else surrounding it. His cigarettes, yes. His lunch, like stopping in the middle of his meal. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to eat my food before I go and rob the place.
Yes.
And I'm probably going to put all my shit in my truck and I'm going to drive my truck away with my shit.
Right.
My brand new truck.
Yes.
So it doesn't make sense to me that he was part of it.
So, at one point later, the cameras recorded the masked man moving a heavy bag on a forklift. However, and again, remember, this is blurry footage. There's no way to tell if the bag contains stolen platinum pipes or if it contains a body.
I feel, how big are the platinum pipes?
I do not know.
How much mass do $250,000 worth of platinum pipes take up? I feel like there would be I know it's blurry, but there should be a distinctive difference between this is $250,000 worth of platinum pipes and a human body.
I'm imagining
a 5'4" human body.
They had to be fairly short sections of pipe, I'm assuming, but I do not know that. I could have gone down that rabbit hole of how platinum pipes are used in glass blowing, but I didn't.
Siri, show me $250,000 worth of platinum pipes.
Dale's children believe their father was an innocent victim. And like I said, his daughter points out, why would he go through the charade? It wasn't the fact.
If you're going to be like, haha, I did this, your shit's going to be together first.
Yes. She said, why would he go through the charade of packing a lunch?
Yeah.
He was not a devious man. And he was a chain smoker, so he wouldn't have left his cigarettes. And his ex-wife, Nancy, pointed out he was only 6 months from retirement and was looking forward to retirement.
Yeah.
So, the Pennsylvania State Police learned during their investigation, now this is very heavily pointed out, that Dale was $30,000 to $40,000 behind in various payments and bills. I'll come back to that.
Okay.
Corning had been in the middle of a downsizing. We all love that.
But if you're going to pay off your bills, you're going to disguise yourself.
Yes.
If you don't disguise yourself, you're going to make a run for it.
So Dale, there had been a lot of layoffs at the plant. So while Dale was still employed, he was removed from his trade shop job and moved into maintenance, which resulted in a wage drop of $5,000 to $7,000.
Damn.
That was why he had taken the night security shift to make up for the lost wages. So
okay, so this is a guy who works to make up the lost wages, though. Like, this is a guy who doesn't...
And also that thing about the debt, he was making payments on both the trailer that he lived in and the truck. So if you disappeared tomorrow, I'm going to make this the generic you to anybody who's listening. How much debt would you be in? How much debt would investigators find? Because almost everybody has a mortgage. And or a car payment and or credit card debt. It seems like they lumped together all the debt he had to say he was $30,000 to $40,000 behind.
But everybody is.
That sounded more like what his debt was.
Yeah.
Just not, he was that far in arrears. His daughter Penny also points out that he owned stock in Corning and had other investments. Mm-hmm. He had a 401k and he also had $5,000 in savings. Which, I mean, I know today $5,000 in savings doesn't sound like a huge big deal, but he had funds. If he was in an emergency, he had funds.
Yeah.
She claims he didn't need to resort to robbery to cover his temporary shortfall. Also, his best friend refuses to believe Dale could have anything to do with the robbery. His children brought up a very good point. They reported that they had visited their dad regularly at the Corning plant, which isn't that unusual where if your parents been there for 27 years, you've been there. And that everyone knew the back door was never locked. Uh-huh. I mean, they just walked in when they wanted to visit him.
So, 80s.
Yeah. 80s. It 80s
really
media.
Just explains it all away.
It does. Another theory suggested by law enforcement and Corning is that Dale did have a hand in the robbery. He planned to leave the area and go to Australia or Canada and come back in 7 years after the statute of limitations had expired. So if that was true, he never came back.
Right.
So Corning eventually sold the plant and the new operators let it be known that platinum was no longer being used there. A quick aside about Corning and how they reacted after the theft and his disappearance. In 1990, Dale's daughter, now he went missing in 87, so it's just 3 years later. Dale's daughter, Penny, petitioned the court to have Dale declared dead. The corporate attorneys for Corning fought back, saying it was equally likely that Dale was part of the crime rather than a victim. They also refused to release any of his pension or life insurance money to his children. The court ruled that there was not enough evidence to declare him dead, in part because 7 years had not passed.
Yeah.
So for anybody who doesn't know it, typically you have to be if there's no evidence, if you just go missing, it's 7 years before the courts will declare you dead.
Yeah.
So in July of 2014, Dale was declared legally dead, and with the date of death recorded as the day of his disappearance. Corning was ordered to pay 27 years worth of interest on his pension, as well as his life insurance.
I'm betting he was a middling employee because they thought that he'd done this, and or they were determined to not have to pay out, so they were going to make it look like he did it.
Oh yeah. So Dale Kerstetter has never been seen or heard from since that night. Investigators, and they've done all kinds of investigations, have never been able to track what might have happened to the platinum pipes either.
Interesting. So there was never like an obvious,
no,
these got sold off here.
There was never a quantity that would have amounted to the weight of platinum. Some interesting notes from Reddit on this topic. Now, I don't often cite Reddit as a source, but sometimes they have some interesting shit. They were all over the fact that Corning called him a marginal employee after the fact. But they were more than willing to let him be their sole guard of millions of dollars worth of materials and equipment. Also, interestingly, a couple of local bartenders chimed in. So the plant's location is a typical small town. It's actually like between two small towns. Both of these guys who bartended in these towns commented that while the topic of Dale's disappearance still comes up in conversation, there's been none of that small town, oh, we know who did it. About this one.
Yeah.
Because there's always, even if it's not right, there's always, well, we all know that.
That's one of the things, like, part of me wants to live in a small town. The other part of me is like, I don't know, I'm out there enough that there'll be rumors about me.
So not saying that small towns get it right, but there aren't even any rumors that he held a grudge for getting fired. You know, there are no rumors that, yep, Dale must have done. There's nothing. There has been a surprising lack of rumor about this. Everybody assumes he's dead. And
even his ex-wife, if your ex-wife doesn't take the opportunity to be like, oh yeah, that fucker would have done this, then that says something about that person too.
Yeah. And one child saying he was such a good dad. Well, for the most part, every child thinks their parents are good. But all of his kids were close.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't a freak thing. And for him to just disappear right off the face of the earth.
They've offered me nothing compelling to think that he was a criminal.
No, absolutely nothing. I just think Corning was a big corporate asshole and didn't want to pay his life insurance or his
so they tried to twist things.
Benefit. Yeah.
That's probably where the disagreements happened and where, when he was looking at the camera.
Yes, exactly.
He probably knew he's going to die.
And there was a theory, I didn't mention it, there was a theory that he helped someone plan it and that person double-crossed him.
Yeah. I still maintain that the other things, the way they were left, doesn't jive with that.
It does not. Again, he would have had his cigarettes with him.
Right.
When he was being double-crossed, he would have had his cigs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
So,
So, my sources for this, besides Reddit, were the Thought Catalog website, Unsolved website, and Unsolved Mysteries fandom.
Yeah.
I wrote a whole thing without going to Wikipedia for it.
Yeah.
Wikipedia just gives you such a great framework.
I like but my go-to, and I'll name it if I got them from there, is the bottom where the sources have been cited.
Yes.
Because it leads me to articles that don't come up in my search.
Yes.
So
those articles are so good
for real. Sometimes there's so many of them. So, yeah. It's that time, folks. That time to go.
We should have a closing song to sing.
We should not.
I don't know if that's because you don't want to sing or because you've heard me sing.
I love singing. I have a medal still that I won for singing. I could sing at one point. I can't. But no.
I've never won.
I don't want to sing. It was in solo and ensemble.
How about kazoos? We could do a little kazoo song at the end.
Laws, no.
And this is where I wish y'all could see the look I'm getting from Shannon.
Look, what are you trying to do to me?
I don't want to sing. I don't want to play the kazoo.
What's wrong with you?
I've been back from vacation. What time is it?
For a few hours.
24 hours. And half of those were spent sleeping. So.
Yeah.
Aloha.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back next week with more shenanigans.